Hey guys, Mike here with EBR, and this is the Retrospec Beaumont Rev 2. It's a Dutch-style city commuter bike that comes in at just $999. So what does $999 get you in 2025's e-bike market? Well, take a ride with me and let's find out. All right guys, so the Retrospec Beaumont Rev 2. Now this bike, like I said, comes in at just $999, so a super approachable price, especially in today's 2025 e-bike market. Now this bike is UL 2271 and UL 2849 certified, which is pretty impressive considering the sub $1,000 price point that they still have invested in that safety certification. Now this bike comes in weighing what they say is 57.5 pounds. I threw this one up on the scale, and for me, with the battery, so total bike complete, it weighed about 62 pounds, and when I took that battery out, that went down to about 56 pounds. Now this is a class 2 e-bike, meaning our pedal assistance and our throttle speeds are going to be capped at 20 miles an hour. So not a class 3, but capped at 20 miles an hour for the class 2 designation. Now, when it comes to the frame, this is a steel frame, and you don't hear the word steel used often in cycling these days, but there is a whole subculture and cult of cyclists who still love steel bikes. They were bigger when I was younger, but not so much these days. But the reason why they're still loved by so many cyclists is because steel has some really nice vibration dampening properties, and it actually soaks up some of the imperfections on your ride and does a little bit of the heavy lifting when it comes for comfort without the expensive price tag of something like ultralight carbon fiber frames. Now this frame comes in 6 different color options. This one here is the eggshell color, but if you don't like this, like I said, 6 color options, there's something there for everybody. And this fits, it comes in one size, fitting riders from 5 foot flat to 5'10". So again, one of those one size fits most style bikes. I'm 5'11", so I'm technically outside of that threshold of 5'10", and I found the bike to be plenty comfortable. It didn't give me any problems. It felt a little bit small underneath me, but it wasn't anything that impeded riding the bike. So I would say if you're north of me, maybe 6 foot and above, definitely look elsewhere in their lineup for something that fits you a little bit better. But at 5'11", it still worked out just fine. Now, some numbers for this frame. We've got a standover height or a step over height. Basically the distance from the ground to where you throw your leg over is roughly 19.5 inches. We've got about 14.5 inches of reach up top, and the max payload on this bike is 350 pounds. Now, when it comes to tires and wheels, they went with 27.5 inch or 27.5 inch alloy wheels, and the tires are 27.5 by 2.4 inches. So a nice thick 2.4 inch wide tire. I really like the look of the gum wall or tan sidewall tires. They have a nice semi-slick commuter pattern on them, and they roll very quietly and very smoothly. Now I've been running about 30 to 35 PSI in these, and it feels just fine on the road with this super comfy saddle and these wide tires and the steel frame. It just really does ride smooth and soaks up a lot of bumps for you without any need of something special like a fork on the bike. Now, when it comes to fenders, we do have front to back fender coverage, and uniquely, these are not aluminum or plastic. These are also steel fenders. So they do have a little bit of metallic sound to them. If you bump them into something, they can get bent, potentially rust, but all in all, they are super durable, and they're kind of a thick gauge steel. I don't know how thick, but they feel pretty solid. They don't have a lot of flex like thinner aluminum ones do have. Now, when it comes to mounting points and racks, we've got a couple mounting points on the rack here for like straps and things, plus the rack itself, which is rated for about 25 pounds. And then up front, you have 4 bolt attachment points for a front basket. Now, there's no mounting points on the down tube or seat tube for things like water bottle cages, but I think in the event that you do a front basket, or you can just put your gear on your rear rack here. Now, when it comes to lighting, they did provide front to back lighting. Now, normally when we see lighting on e-bikes, they generally just wire them into the e-bike's wiring system or electric system. But in this case, they used a battery operated headlight and taillight. So you will need to replace and use batteries on these as the interval changes are needed. All right, so let's talk the motor and battery. Now back here, the motor is a rear hub motor, and it's a 350 watt motor. Now Retrospec does not disclose or list their torque rating on this motor, but I found riding it for the last week and a half, it had plenty of power for when I needed, but keep that in mind, it's going to be within reason. I'm not going to go up any crazy 15% inclines and just expect us to throttle all the way up, but for day-to-day rides around town, rolling terrain, mild hills, it's perfectly sufficient for the job. Now, when it comes to drive modes, there's a just typical PAS 1 through 5, level 1 being the minimum assistance and level 5 being the maximum assistance you can use. Now, when it comes to the battery on this, it is a 36-volt battery with 10 amp hours, giving you 360 watt hours of power for your rides. Now, it's also UL 2271 certified, and it comes with a key so you can actually secure this for off the bike charging, or just taking it off the bike to secure it in general. Say you got to park your bike outside somewhere while you're at work. This will allow you to take it indoors and charge it. I'll show you how this can be removed real quick. So the bike comes with a key. Now there's a key slot on the other side of this battery, but I will say going into this, there's a quick release collar on the seat post, and when it's in the back position, it will prevent the battery from coming all the way out. So I just recommend flipping that forward and then putting the key in, making a half turn that will release it. Then you slide it up. It's a pretty tight squeeze through this little slot behind the seat, but you can remove it, which is nice. Now, when it comes to the warranty on this battery has a 1-year warranty. The frame has a lifetime warranty, and then all other electrical components have a 6-month warranty. When it comes to range on this, they say it'll get up to 38 miles. So of course I put it to the test. I started on a minimum assistance, so level 1, and I got over 40 miles, just over 40 miles. So right around their estimated 38. And then on maximum assistance, so using PAS 5, I was able to cover 16 miles at full blast. So all in all, not bad there. Now to put this back, it's pretty simple and straightforward. You're just gonna do the opposite direction that we came in. So we're gonna feed it back through this little hole, line up the little track guides, and it'll click in place. If I get it right, it'll click in place. There we go. All right, so when it comes to the componentry on the Retrospec Beaumont Rev 2, we've got a straightforward 7-speed drivetrain. It's gonna be a Shimano tourney rear 7-speed derailleur with a 14 to 34 rear cassette. Now up front, we've got a 42-tooth chainring with a nice color-matched chain guard. Now for crank sets, we've got a 170 millimeter pro wheel crank arm, and these have flat plastic black pedals with some reflectors and a little bit of traction there, grip on the surface of the flat. And when it comes to braking, Retrospec went with a Tektro disc brake setup, but these are mechanical disc brakes, so they do have a cable pull actuation to them, not hydraulic fluid like you would typically see in hydraulic disc brakes. These are mechanical Tektro disc brakes. Now the rotors are 180 millimeters, and they have 2 piston calipers. Now, as far as how they feel, if you've never ridden a bike with cable actuated or mechanical disc brakes, they have good biting power. They still have the 2 piston calipers, but the pull actuation and the cable tension will always have a little bit of flex or give to it because you're pulling and tensioning a cable versus hydraulic fluid that is more immediate and full power. So the braking power is there. It's just a little bit more of a different feel when you brake. Certainly not as quick of a response as hydraulic fluid, but all in all, they still brake very, very well. This is one of the features of the bike, much like the tires, that I found to be one of the more valuable. This is a super comfortable wide cruiser style. They call it their comfort saddle, which it truly is a very comfortable saddle. Now it's on this alloy seat post, and you have a quick release lever for your adjustments. Up front, no suspension, or in the back, it's a fully rigid steel bike, including a steel fork here. And then in the cockpit, we have a pretty simple setup, as you would guess. So we have color matched tan grips that are lock-on so they won't slip or move away over time. On both sides here, we've got the cable actuated brake levers that go down to the brakes, an over the bar Shimano index shifter, a e-bike bell, your reflector, and then on this side we have the only display, if you want to call it that, but it's essentially the control pad for the bike. So there's no window or screen like you would typically see. Instead, you have these illuminated buttons and that have 5 lights. So PAS 1 through 5 will light up based on what you're using, and your battery power has a 5-bar light that will show you your battery level in 5 bars as well. Other than that, you've got a power, a walk mode, and then your PAS up and PAS down buttons, and then your throttle here is on this left side as well. And that really does wrap up the cockpit on this bike. When it comes to wiring, they do have quite a bit coming off the front end, and none of it's internally routed. It goes under this bar until it finally hits this down tube and it starts to get internally routed. So all of this up here is managed with cable stays and ties to kind of keep things just in order. And I think all in all, it's out of the way, just not fully integrated like you may be used to seeing. All right, guys, so we're out riding the Retrospec Beaumont Rev 2, and I'm gonna go ahead and turn on my speedometer so we can see speeds, because this bike does not have an LCD display, so you'll never technically know your miles per hour. Just know that its max speed is 20 miles an hour. But for the sake of you guys being able to track, let's turn on the speedometer wherever that app might be. There it is. All right, so we're cruising about 10 miles an hour, and the first thing I noticed on this bike, I usually start talking about geo, or how the bike feels when you ride it, and it's on that line. But this is a steel frame and fork, so you've got steel frame, steel fork, steel fenders, a lot of steel. And for those of you with some years on you, you remember all bikes were mostly steel, and then aluminum became the big deal, and now carbon is the big deal. But steel's kind of a throwback, and steel has a place in cycling in my heart, because look, I mean, the bike still comes in at 57 pounds, and that's not crazy for an e-bike, yet you get the advantages of steel, which are the dampening and just the natural kind of smoother ride that steel offers. I think a lot of people write steel off as just being big and heavy and stiff, and while that may be true, it does a good job of eating up road vibrations, and I kind of really like that aspect of steel. But let's see the speeds. So I don't know if you can see this, but this is the only display we have. So we're going to bump it up to PAS 5, and then we're going to just see how long it takes to get to 20 miles an hour. 3, 2, 1, go. Pretty steady off the line. Already at about 14, 17, 18, 19, and 20. So pretty much in line with what you'd expect on like a cruiser style city bike. This has those classic Dutch cruiser bars. Let me get around this couple so I'm not yapping when I go by them. Thank you. All right, so the geo on this is obviously, if you can't tell, it's pretty upright. So I'm sitting straight up. I can see everything out in front of me. I'm not bent over at all, and there's no, aggressive body position on this. It's pretty, what it should be, which is something you commute around. You ride through town. You ride through markets. It's just nice and upright and comfortable. And with the sweatback cruiser bars, it just feels really good. One thing, there's no motor assist right here, and the only sound I hear at all is basically the wind in my ears and a little bit of just, it's almost silent, but there's a little tiny bit of tire rubber meeting the road sound, but it's definitely not loud in any way. There's no rattling, despite the steel fenders. There's no rattling sounds on your left. And so I feel like maybe it's the steel, maybe it's just put together well, but it's very smooth and solid, feels nice. So we're going about 17, let's get up to 20 and then play with these brakes a little bit. You can kind of hear the motor getting up there. It's a little louder than some, but certainly not too loud. All right, so 3, 2, 1. So as you probably heard there, they stopped really well, but there was a slight wheel lockup in the back because of how hard I was pulling. So we have mechanical disc brakes. So you still get, 2 piston calipers and 180 millimeter rotors, but instead of hydraulic fluid making the pressure and push, these are drawn by cable tension, much like your shifter is on your bike. They still stop really well. They have good stopping power. They just don't feel the same as hydraulic disc brakes, but they work better than, say, like V-brakes or rim brakes. I've never had a problem stopping in nearly any situation. Unexpected stops, expected stops, they feel fine. There's just a little bit of a different feeling from a true hydraulic disc brake. But these are made by Tektro, so servicing and maintenance and longevity and just reputation is all in place, which is good. So really PAS 1 through 5, top speed 20 miles an hour. The bike's just a good, no frills, get around town and get whatever job done you need, whether that just be commuting to work or going and grabbing something from the farmer's market on the weekend or just a weekend ride on the paths like this in your town. It really shines in those areas. It's not going to be performance oriented. It's not going to be trying to impress you with big spec sheets. It's just a simple no frills commuter that I think a lot of people will enjoy, and it's got a nice easy step through frame design, making getting on and off easy. I will say one size fits all frame, or excuse me, one size fits most frame. This says it fits riders 5 foot flat to 5'10". Well, I'm 5'11", so technically I'm not in their range. And while the bike doesn't feel necessarily too small for me, I do feel like I would want to go up just a hair in size. So if you're north of 6 foot, I would definitely look at some other bikes in Retrospec's lineup if you like the way they do their styles and designs. All in all, I mean, we've got 7-speed gears here. So I'm currently in 7th gear and I'm pedaling. Let me see if there's any kind of pedal power loss or ghost pedaling. So I'm cruising around 20 miles an hour, pedaling the whole time. No ghost pedaling, which is great. Yeah, I mean, kind of front to back, it just feels like you'd expect. Nothing crazy, it's not winning any sprints, it's not a drag racer or a hill climber. It's just a great little cruiser for getting around. Feels very smooth. I like the 2.4 inch wide tires. Not only do they roll fast and quietly, but with 2.4 inches wide, you can air these down just a bit and get a little more cush on the ride, although it's really comfortable to begin with. But let's go talk to Ben, our mechanic, and just get his thoughts on, you know, from a builder's perspective or a mechanic's perspective, where the bike shines and where it could use some improvements. All right, guys, we are here with Ben. Once again, he is our in-house bike shop mechanic. He's got a lot of experience wrenching on bikes and then getting after us about putting things away in the right spots. Today, he's going to share his opinions on the Retrospec Beaumont Rev 2 and talk about some things he likes on it and some things he would improve. Now, before he does, Ben, I will get out of your way. I want to say thank you to Feedback Sports. If you guys are looking for bike stands, this is their Pro HD rack. Very solid, very sturdy, and it's aluminum, so it's lightweight relative to the stand itself. And they have a whole lineup of other stands and toolkits. So if you want to check out that stuff, I'll put a link down in the description. Ben, just kick it off with what you like about the Beaumont Rev 2.
All right, will do. Thanks, Mike. On this bike, I will traditionally talk bad or poorly about a bike that's got a threaded fork and what's called a quill stem. However, in this case, it's an 1 1/8" threaded fork, which just means it's the thicker of the two sizes. And then with this quill stem, rather than have one that's got a pivot or a hinge to change the angle or the height of it, this one simply just undo the top 6mm bolt. You can raise and lower it, but it's got a lot of range of adjustment. So as far as a threaded fork and a quill stem go, I think they did a great job. Very adjustable, clean looking, great for a beach cruiser like this. So mechanically, man, I think that's awesome. Also with this bike, because it's a cruiser, and I love cruisers, it's got wide rims and big volume tires. Now what that means for the person riding it, it's gonna ride real smooth. Of course, with every bicycle, you can raise and lower the air pressure to accommodate a smoother or more firm ride quality, but when you get a big air volume tire on a big wide rim, gosh, it just makes it ride smooth. And I do like that about cruiser bikes. This isn't really a mechanical function of the bike, but I do have to say how nice this looks. And when I say that, I do like everything's paint matched. So the frame, the rack, really nice chain guard and color match fenders. Man, the thing just, it looks great. Usually if a bike looks great, it's gonna ride great, usually. Let's see, sometimes on bikes, I'm not a big fan of a bolt-on wheel. It's just, when you have to change a flat tire, there's more to take apart, there's more things to hold on to, and maybe even lose if you lose an axle nut. But thinking about where this bike might be ridden, if you ride it down to the ocean, you just need to lock it up, it's gonna be harder to steal just the front wheel. Or if you lock the bike, it's because everything's bolted on using axle nuts. It's kind of an anti-theft mechanism, which I think is a great idea. There's a lot of bike theft near beaches and oceans, so this one would just stay with you a lot longer. The last couple of things that I'll point out that I do like is the location of the battery. And really, the reason that I point that out is because it does help the center of gravity, both on the front to back and also for the height. The bike just doesn't feel heavy or awkward because of the battery placement. I think that's a great piece. And then the last thing that I like quite a bit on this one, Mike, is the 2 bolt lock-on grips. And the reason to like that is anytime you get just a full rubber grip or one with just one screw to hold it on, sometimes you might get some throttling. If this bike is out near the ocean and it's humid or something like that, these 2 bolt lock-on grips are just going to keep these real secure for you.
Nice, Ben. And what kind of things would you improve on a bike like the Beaumont Rev 2?
There's a couple of things that I'm not really fond of on this, and I'll highlight first off is the seat rail clamp. This is a really old design. I've mentioned this on some other reviews. This same seat rail clamp design, I think it was on the first Schwinn Predator I bought back in like 1982 or something like that. We are decades beyond this type of technology. It sure would be nice if they had a micro adjust seat post. Plus these things, because of that system, they tend to move around a little bit when you really ride them hard, or maybe you're a heavy rider. It just takes more to keep that thing tight, and I'm just not a big fan of it. On bikes like this, let's just say that I'm correct, and it is going to be ridden down by the ocean, where you're going to get steel corrosion, probably some rust, maybe some sand and some excess dirt. Sand and dirt, they love steel cables and housing. So rather than a mechanical brake, which this is because it uses a cable and housing, I really think that they could find or source a hydraulic brake for a pretty low cost and probably even keep the overall cost of the bike down. So being a mechanic, that just means for the rider, you're going to have less problems, less maintenance to do with a hydraulic brake over a cable. So that would be something I would ask that they consider to change. 2 last points that I'll bring up. This headlight, while it does work pretty well, it's got a pretty flimsy mount to it. So that's one thing. It bends really easy. You can move it around. That I don't like. And then also, on a lot of these bikes, it seems like they're able to connect the headlight to the battery somehow. So then you don't have to worry about replacing small batteries up here. You don't have to replace anything like that. Just get a cable that goes from the bike battery up to the light. Keep that thing going. And the very last thing is on the back of the bike. So this is called the seat stay. This is called the chain stay. This is the dropout where the wheel mounts. On this particular bike, I haven't seen something like this for quite some time, but the dropout is basically just a stamped steel piece. So they had a thick sheet, looks like probably 1/4 inch thick steel, and they just press it into a shape. Why does that even matter? Well, on a bike like this, where first off, you've got a lot of braking force with the disc brake. Secondly, you've got a motor, a hub motor, so there's a lot of torque going on in here. The last place you want something not very strong and potentially flimsy or easy to bend is the darn dropout. So I think they could have done a better job there. Maybe on the next version of the Beaumont, they get a real molded aluminum or a thicker steel dropout that's just not pressed and shaped like that. It would do the bike, I think, a favor, and it would probably even last longer as a bike.
Nice, man. Once again, Ben, appreciate your time, and we will bring you the next bike when we got it.
All right, thanks, Mike.
All right, guys, so that wraps up our thoughts on the Retrospec Beaumont Rev 2. So if you're looking for kind of a no-nonsense electric commuter bike or a city bike, it's complete with things like fenders, lighting front to back, a rear rack, and it's a super comfortable ride. Now, if you're over 5'10", it's definitely going to be probably outside of your fit range. But for $1,000, it checks a lot of boxes for a lot of folks in keeping things simple and to the point, and it rides really nice. Now, if you have any questions about this bike that I failed to cover, just drop a comment down below. I personally reply to everybody and try to get you the information you're looking for. And until the next time, go ahead, like and subscribe before you leave, and we'll see you guys in the next review.